Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and wherever you are in this wide, wonderful world, you're listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. Ironically enough, but it's not ironic, I'm rechanged and rebranded. I'm actually the sales relationship coach. I was sales training coach, but I actually prefer the sales relationship coach because everything that I do now is to help and serve others and give people value. And it's all about that relationship with people. And one of the reasons I do this podcast is because I meet some phenomenal people where I learn, I grow, but also we serve others to give some golden nuggets through. And today it's all about, and this series is all about insightful leaders, leadership from coaching, psychology, body language, linguistics, and lots of other behavioral economics and all that stuff about the brain, the mind, neuroscience, because I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by how people work and how people operate. So when I train and coach and serve others, these are the areas that I give value. And I always learn from the people like my guest today, Allan Langer. Welcome.
Jason, pleasure to be here. Thank you for
I'm
having me.
so looking forward to it. We had a nice little chat beforehand. And we've been chatting backwards and forwards via LinkedIn as well, which has been good. So, a little bit of a synopsis, and hopefully, you can fill in a lot more gaps than I've got here. Professional speaker, awesome. Published author as well, something that I need to do. An award winning sales professional over 2 decades, similar to myself. And he's a founder and CEO of Seven Secrets of Center of Sales and Marketing in his book. So, looking forward to hearing about that. And sold over 95 million of products and services within his career, and trains hundreds and hundreds of salespeople, and forms motivational talks and seminars, and helps people give value, because you can motivate people, but it's after you motivate them is for them to use and utilize what has been taught on. And it's all about giving that habit forward. It's the way I look at things. So, Allan, welcome. And the first question is, could you fill in a few of the gaps that is missing? I always like to know the anchor points along the way from where you started. What made you get into where you are now? And what was the sort of eureka moment going, I really like this?
Well, thank you
But
for that, Jason. You did a good job with the bio. But how I got to where I am now is sort of so I've always been a writer at heart. Like writing is my happy place. I've always done fiction writing, but as I was going through my sales career and I spent my last 15 years with a very large, very popular window company in the United States called Andersen Windows, and I was their number one sales rep nationally for years. And I started to think that I really wanted to write a book about selling because not patting myself on the back, but I averaged about 65% closing or so during my career, and the office average was about 28. And what I started to realize was that was okay for them. And not only them, but it was also most corporations set up their sales teams, set up their sales process to have a 30 to 35% closing team. They're happy with that. That's a profitable number. And I always looked at that by saying, if I saw 100 people and 70 of them told me no, I'd want to jump off a bridge. Like, how is that a
absolutely, yeah.
successful number? So once I started realizing what I was doing to make myself different, I'm like, I'm going to write this down. I finally sat down and I wrote the book, and the book came out and it actually became a bestseller in 2019. And from there, I started getting speaking engagements, and from there, I started training people, and here I am, and I left my selling career, and now I do this full time, and I love it because teaching and writing and stuff, that's where I love to live, and the day-to-day selling was a blast. I still love it, but this I love even more. So that's how I kind of got here.
I always say, and I interviewed Tom Ziegler, the son of the legendary Zig Ziglar, a while back, and this is something that I believe as well. You connect your passion with your purpose to your dream. So if you're but it takes a little while to find out what your dream actually is. And it took me a little while. I'm sure selling is great and it's wonderful and it's the best job in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But giving a gift forward to someone else to use and
Right.
utilize, something that you've helped learn and grow, stuff that you've read, seminars that you've attended, but you put it into the failures that you've learned and grown from, and you put them into a process. And the process is, I know there's lots of process that, as we know, there's spin selling and there's this, that, and the other. But what works for you and how you can articulate that up to other people is phenomenal. So putting that into a book is great. So the question I'm going to ask you is, what did you learn from some of the mistakes that you made, and what did you learn that other people were doing that you was going, I'm not going to do that. This works. This is my secret sauce. How can I do this? How can I make this into a process? There's lots of answers to that, and there's quite a long, faluted question there.
Well, here's the thing that I've learned is you obviously need a process. Every company needs a process. Every person needs a process, but the process is only your foundation. You have to be agile enough to know where to go within the process. One of my favorite quotes of all time was by Tony Robbins, and he said, "Let the prospect determine your presentation."
Mm-hmm.
See, salespeople are trained to let the presentation happen in front of whatever prospect they have. And that is the biggest mistake, because I mean, I've literally heard sales trainers say, nope, you cannot deviate from the script. You have to do this. You have to go A, B, C, D. And it's so ridiculous to me because every single person is so completely different. It's like giving the same medicine to everyone that walks in a hospital. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So once I started realizing, and again, this is not rocket science, what I'm saying here, but taking it from, okay, this is the concept to actually implementing it is a huge difference, because people fall back on what they know. So they say, oh, here's my process. And they don't listen to the customer. They don't pay attention to the personality in front of them. They don't pay attention to their body language. They don't pay attention to quite a few things that is going to determine what your presentation should be like. So yes, you need to have a process. You need to obviously have product training and a process. But once you start, and what I started focusing on is how the human brain works, the psychology of everything, and what I need to be saying and doing in front of this customer to actually make them feel comfortable. I never think about, I need to do this to make the sale. And I'm always thinking about, I want them to feel comfortable with me, comfortable enough to say, you know what, I want to buy this. Because if you do that, then the natural culmination of that is a sale.
Yeah. It is to help people buy.
Right.
It's also a couple of things that you've said is, when you focus in on the money or you focus in on the sale, you're never going to get where you want, because you get desperation. People can resonate with that and they can smell it. They can, I don't know whether there's some sort of sixth sense there or something like that. I don't know what it is, but people know when you're selling. But when you're adding value and having a conversation, and when you're using those big things on your head called ears and listening intently to what the other people say, I have to listen even more, because at times I get tinnitus. So I have to really focus in rather than the noise whistling around in my ears, because it's not about me. It's something that I always suggest, and I'm sure you're going to say the same thing. Not about me. It's all about them. It's all about the other person. And it's really understanding that. How do you train for that muscle? What would you suggest to train that muscle that we have between our heads to listen better?
Well, what I know when I do some coaching, and Zoom is actually, there was so many awful things from the pandemic, but I think one of the great things that came out of it was this, like all the walls in the world went down and everybody was on Zoom. And now I can speak to someone like yourself in Ireland, and I have a client in Indonesia. So I got to listen to sales calls, where before you had to ride with them, or you had to take their take on what the call was like. So now I can actually listen to an hour sales call. And when I run into people who didn't shut up, didn't let the prospect talk at all, I would say, every time you get that feeling to say something, don't do it.
Yeah.
Pinch yourself. Some guy said he kept a paperclip in his hand and he squeezed it every time he wanted to say something. I said, if you can do that at least 50% of the time, that means you're going to talk half as much, and your presentation is going to be so much better. So we all get that. When someone else is talking, we're thinking, what do I need to say next? Don't think about that. Just let it be natural. Shut up, turn your brain off, and listen. And you'll naturally know what to say next, rather than saying, okay, I better get this out. I better talk about, oh my God, I got to talk about the warranty before. And then you just cut the person off and you start, I got to talk about the flux capacitor before I get off the call. So
The
that's how
DeLorean flux capacitor.
yeah. So the brain, the sales brain works that way for people who are trained to do it that way. And that's what I'm trying to like untrain them to kind of go at it from a different way.
Ironically enough, I'll tell you a little secret, is my son just walked in a few moments ago and I was listening into you, but he was going, Dad, Dad, Dad. And it was here in my ears like that. So I had to put you on mute for a second, me on mute while he was going, Dad, 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 Dad. And he won't stop until we get an answer. So I put you on mute and I was going, go away. But I was listening to what you had to say because I know it's important. For what you had to say. Like I see my son all the time, so that's all right, but I don't see you all the time. So it's good to feedback knowledge and forward. Something that I like to do, and this is my secret, is when I've got a team in front of me, I get everyone to talk at the same time. Talking about anything. Rabble, 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 rabble. And I go, and I did this the other day, and I say, stop. And then I say, did you hear anyone? And they go, no, I didn't hear it. What anyone else said. So that's what's going on inside your head. Because if you hear the internal dialogue, the language, you're not actually listening to the other person. And that's all what it's all about. It's not about us or the next question or the script that you might have in front of you. Right. So I would always suggest use that as a guide, but not to go word by word or memorize it and then throw it in the bin or whatever you need to do. So
no, you can't see the whole beginning of my book is about, you're a salesperson. We're a salesperson. There's salespeople everywhere. You have a product that someone needs, but they still don't want to meet with you.
Yeah.
See, that's the biggest conundrum is people don't want to meet with salespeople. And I actually give it a term in my book. It's almost like it's a fear of meeting with a salesperson because you don't want to get ripped off. They're going to make you feel crappy. They're going to make you feel insignificant. So I don't want to meet with that person. It's a fear. And I call it riptotrustophobia in my book. It's a term I made up. It's a phobia. And I talk about how did we get here as a society that everybody needs to buy something. Everybody needs something at some point, and they have to talk to the salesperson, but they don't want to. We're like, salespeople are necessary evils. So how do you become the salesperson that someone actually wants to talk to? Because if you become that person, you become that anti-salesperson that they're not expecting. Oh my God, they think they just saw, the Dalai Lama. They're like, oh my God, this salesperson actually listened to me. You need to go to him. Then you start getting referred and people talk about you because it's not what they were expecting.
I always said, we spoke a little bit beforehand and I was giving you those two scenarios about two different people, and I'll shortcut to that. The one person that I met and I was talking about social media and LinkedIn and stuff like that, and the other person was, we met and I just thought we were generally having a conversation, but he tried to sell to me all the way through, and I was going, my receptors just went up automatically. I'm a salesperson and I understand what he's doing to me as well, probably more like yourself. The other person was just helping me and advising me, giving me insights, giving me stuff that I can learn and grow. And ironically enough, I gave the other person, I didn't buy from him, but I referred him on to other people, loads of other people. Right. So that's what it's the difference. And that's how I see it as well. You're an advisor. You're also giving people, you're educating people, but you're also serving them and you're listening and understanding. And that's how people buy from you, as opposed to you selling to you. So you got the 7 secrets to selling more by selling less. So how do you come up with the idea for that? Because I'm fascinated with that. I'm always fascinated with that and your ideas.
So once I started like paying attention to what I was doing, because I was kind of just doing things. And once I said, I'm not following this script anymore, because again, the script, I would follow the script and I would be a 25 to 30% closer like everyone else in the office.
Mhm.
I'm like, I wasn't, it didn't feel natural to me. I didn't feel, so I started just being natural. So here's a funny but shocking story, actually. So once I started doing what I was doing and I started closing much, much higher, one day I'm in the office and I had the day off and I was looking, we had the typical sales war room, all the numbers on the board and everything. And,
Oh
the
yeah.
people at the top and the poor people at the bottom. And I saw two of the new guys were closing. Both of them were closing under 20%. And that's rough. That's a rough, if you're a salesperson, you're not selling 20%, you're having a rough career. So I went to my boss and I said, I'm off today. I got nothing to do. Why don't you let me run with these two guys? I'll see what they're doing and see if I can help them. You know what he said to me? He's like, no. I don't want you to go near them.
What?
They need to learn the process. What you do, you just go do your thing. He called me a field salesperson.
Yeah.
You just do your thing. And then he said to me, what you do can't be trained. And I took that as a challenge, because that's when the book was in my head. And I said, I disagree with you. I think what I do can be trained. And
Yeah.
that's when I sat down and really said, okay, this is what I'm doing here. Oh yeah, I'm using social proof here. Oh, I'm using this here. Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm actually concentrating on body language. So they
Mhm.
became, I first had 10 things, and then I really narrowed it down to 7. And that's when I wrote the book. But that's the mentality. The corporate mentality is like, he said they're at 18%. And he said they still need to learn the process, rather than having their best sales rep go and try to help them, which was amazing to
Yeah.
me.
That's absolutely phenomenal. That's where a leader needs to be trained to be a
Yeah,
coach. That's
right.
where they really need to understand the challenge is within scenarios like that. And I've gone through that myself and understood that is leaders or sales managers, like they do really well and then they're given a job as a sales manager and they haven't got a clue, rather than given the tools that they need to succeed, to help their teams follow through and get better, rather than just leaving them out to dry. So what you did, Allan, was phenomenal. They should you should maybe you should have gone, I'll do that anyway. that's
Right.
that's really good. That's a good gift to have, helping others, because you wanted to, by the sound of it.
Yeah. I wanted to help them because I just know the feeling. Yeah, we all do as salespeople, that if you're having a rough month or a rough quarter, there's no worse feeling than that. You feel, there's so many things, and especially this was the world of commission only. There was no base salary here, so
Yeah.
you didn't sell, you didn't eat, and
Yep.
now it becomes, it compounds after one appointment after another. Now you're getting desperate, and that gets even worse in front of the prospect. So yeah, I just knew the feeling, and I said, let me help them, and he flat out said, nope, stay away from them. Crazy.
My God, because inadvertently that helps you, because number one, it tests your theories along the way. This is what
Hmm.
I'm doing, so why not help people? Because I've been in the same boat where I've been completely self-employed, like I am now. But this was 15 years, 20 years ago. Completely self-employed. I had to. Everything was self-generating. If I didn't sell, I didn't eat, like yourself. So
Yep.
what would you think makes the mindset of success within helping others? Because there is a certain thing that certain professionals have it, but it can be a learned behavior as well. What do you think those traits are?
Well, I read a study, that was done, um, through the Harvard Business School. That's why I was pausing. I was trying to remember where it was from, and it was a fascinating study. It was done over, I think the study was done over 10 years. And what they were looking at, these two guys were looking at, they were wondering why there was such a high turnover rate in the world of insurance sales. Insurance sales, it's one of the highest turnover professions in the world. It's
Mhm.
almost 35 to 40% every single year is a turnover. And so they did this study on what makes a good salesperson. What makes a good salesperson, not only to the customer, but to the salesperson themselves. And the top 2 traits, number one is empathy, which
Yep.
didn't surprise me. Number one is empathy. But number 2 is actually self-motivation and wanting to be successful.
Yeah.
When you combine empathy and wanting to help people and wanting to be successful with that, you become a really good salesperson. And
Yeah.
notice none of that had to do with making money. None of that had to do with bonuses. None of that had to do with all of that. It was like, I want to be successful in my career with helping people.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a fascinating, a very telling study. And then you think about yourself. Well, yeah, I am empathetic, and yeah, I do have a drive. I do want to be successful, but I consider my success not by monetary figures. I consider my success by the network that I've built and the people that I've helped and the testimonials that I get and those type of things. That's what kind of drives me. And you know, you just did a talk in front of 200 people. I did one last week in front of about 60, and it jazzes you up. It's like that's
No,
you're on you're alive on that stage and you're helping people, and it doesn't have anything to do with ego. It has to do with the empathetic part of it. And so yeah, that's how I would answer that question is with those two traits.
the other bit I would carry on top of that is being accountable for your own actions
Mm-hmm.
and also self-learning. So you've all got to, as you said, you got up to 65%, but you had to do that by learning stuff along the way. You must have been going, I've got to have a strategy here. So like I was at 25% or whatever you were at, but you had to learn and you had to be accountable for your own actions to get yourself up to 65% and
Right.
realize that there's something within this organization which isn't going right. I need to fix it along the way. The only person that's going to help me is me. I,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of companies are mollycoddling their reps now because they have so much on offer. The bigger tech companies, I'm not going to name them. I might name them, but they have they have all of this sales enablement. They have all of this other stuff with them to help them. But the only people that can help them is themselves. So, what were you doing along the way to help yourself learn and grow?
Oh, I was consuming everything I could. I was buying every book. I was listening to every podcast, and I actually mentioned this in my book that um, the most successful people in the world, are learners. But here's another study that I saw, which is fascinating. So the self-help industry, the professional self-help industry is, I don't know, a $20 billion industry per year.
Mhm.
But 94% of the people who buy some sort of self-help product, a book or a course or whatever, 94% don't finish it. The 6% that do finish it are the most successful people in the world. So my advice right now is if you buy something or if you join a course or get a book, not only finish it, but implement it, take action on it. You can
Absolutely.
read 10 books and you say, okay, that's a great book, and you put it down and you never do anything. Then it does, you had a good read, but you didn't implement it in your own world. So that's what I started to do. And then, I really dove into body language initially because I
Yeah.
just think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Neural NLP, neuro logistic programming, just understanding the two things I did at the beginning that were massively helpful was body language and trying to understand the personality in front of me
Yep.
and altering my presentation and what I was saying based on those two things.
Yeah.
Because
I
if you can
totally
figure that
concur.
out, if you can figure out, okay, I've got an analytical engineer in front of me, or I've got an empath in front of me, or I've got, the four basic personalities, I would my presentation, if you want to call it, change to every single person. Some of my appointments were 3 hours, some of them were 25 minutes because of the person in front of me.
Yeah.
And if someone is listening to this now, that is a huge piece of advice is don't just plow along with your presentation. Try to figure out who's in front of you and what they want to hear. Because if you start delivering what they actually want to hear, you're halfway home.
Yeah. I totally concur. That sounds like we're on the same wavelength here because I've done all the NLP, which is great, wonderful, and I learned it backwards, inside out. But it's to practice it and learn it
Yeah.
in its purest form. But make sure that you learn it in the way, not textbook, but just be natural and organic with it. The question that I was going to ask is, what's your favorite book then? What's your number one book in the, not necessarily the area of sales, because I think it goes into psychology. I think it goes into body language. I think it goes into other different areas, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
What's your number one?
Well, got a bunch pop in my head. Obviously the now the name is escaping me. The Napoleon Hill book. What is that book?
Oh, Think Rich, Grow Rich. That's
Yeah,
up
that's
there
it.
with me as well, actually.
Yeah, that one.
That's
But I
really
tell you what,
awesome.
so from a practical standpoint, I love Jill Conrath's book. You ever hear of Jill Conrath? She
Yep.
wrote Snap Selling. That was an excellent book. God, there's so many that, the ones, I wasn't a fan of the Tom Hopkins of the world, because they were very process. And like, I remember one time that I actually saw Tom Hopkins speak, and nothing against Tom, but I think his process worked for the time that it was. But he would, like, his big thing was put the contract on the table, put the pen on the contract. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it just doesn't make any
Out of
sense.
the office. Get out of the office.
Yes. So, but again, you got to read all these things and figure out what's comfortable for you, because you're you. You could read a sales process and say, I can't do that. That's not going to make me feel natural. Then don't do it. If you find a process that you say, this is really me, this resonates with me, then practice it and do it, and you'll just be better off with that. For me, I didn't want to come up with a process in my book. The process for me is to understand these 7 things as different strategies that you can utilize when you're in front of a human being.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to use all 7, but if that day body language is important, there's a whole chapter on body language. How do I use social proof? How do I talk about social proof and have that be make the customer feel comfortable? So it's not like, okay, you got to do A, B, C, D, and E, like, spin selling or all these other things that are out there, challenger sales, these things.
Loads of acronyms.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I didn't want to come up with that. I wanted to say, here are 7 ways you can help yourself not only sell more, but feel good about yourself as a salesperson.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Like, it is that natural, organic way of doing things. I always think, again, people smells desperality. People know there's a process. People understand that there is, and I get a little bit challenged in that area when they're robotic in front of you. Ironically enough, I was on a podcast I don't know, about a year ago, and this lady had her phone up in front of me, and it was straight up like that, and she's reading off the questions by question. She's going, Jason, I have another question for you. And I was going, oh my God, where is this going? And it was almost like that. And I was going, oh my goodness, no, don't do it. And I always ask at the end, I said, look, can I help you? I said, look, can I help you? Just the next time you do it, just don't show your phone and look like you're talking to me.
Right. In a conversational way.
In a conversation. And it wasn't. It was just very, I don't know whether she's nervous. I don't know. But we all have to start from somewhere. And I just said, look, if you are nervous, just tell someone, look, this is the first time that I've done this. And everyone understands that. I remember, probably like yourself, the first time that you're out selling and you just got off the training course and you fired up. But sometimes I think a little bit of authenticity there and vulnerability, just to let them know that, like, this is my first time doing it. Be good, be nice to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're my first appointment, be nice to me kind of thing, and joke about it and make them laugh. Laughter leads to sales because everybody's comfortable. Yeah. And it can't be fake stuff. The whole body language thing is, you want to go from when you first meet someone, you get the polite smile, you get the fake smile. Yeah. And when you want to turn that into the genuine smile, then you're doing a good job when that polite smile turns genuine. So,
and I think vulnerability is also quite key as well, because that builds that connection and that trust as well with people. I always say you can see everything in the eye. And I like to say you smile inside, which if you smile inside your brain, it resonates throughout the rest of your body, and you can see it in the eyes and you can see it in the micro expressions around. And that shows that either you're trustworthy, you're compelling, and you're quite real, but you have that little shining spark in your eyes that people can resonate. You can smile, but it might not smile in the eye. Do you understand what I mean? I'm sure you do.
Oh,
Hopefully.
I do. There was always, even when you're on the phone with someone, there's that phrase that people can hear you smile.
They
They
can.
hear it in your voice. If you're genuine on the phone and you're smiling, people hear that. If you're just a cranky, here's call 71 today of the 100 that I have to make, that you're way behind the eight ball. So always think it's a great point. Always think about being happy and smiling and enjoying yourself, because
Yeah.
let's face it, if you're not enjoying yourself, what's the point? Go
Yeah.
to find
It
someone
is
else,
about
something else to do. Yeah.
something that I did a while back, which is like a bit of I was in a call center and got some mirrors up, and they did their calls in front of the mirrors.
Did they really?
Yeah, and that was real fun. It was just a bit of a test, and they did it from team A to team B just to see, just to prove it works. So
Yeah.
sometimes you need to prove it, and
Yeah.
seeing yourself in the mirror actually does it. And you, like here, we can both see each other smile, which is good. So it's
Right.
that same thing, and you get that physiology up. And I was telling them how to get their physiology right and sitting upright because they can't see it, but it shows in your voice.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really does.
So the question I was going to ask you, Alan, if you were interviewing yourself, what sort of questions would you ask yourself in a holistic point of view?
If I was interviewing myself for a job or for
No, just
a
interviewing
podcast.
yourself right now. Interview. If you were interviewing you, what questions would
Okay.
you ask you? If you were side by
Wow.
side.
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question before. If I was interviewing myself, I'd probably ask myself, um, what motivates me. I'm always interested in what motivates people and what's the reason they're doing things, because, as Simon Sinek said, it's about your why. Why are you doing this? And if you don't really know, or you're struggling with trying to figure that out, that's one of the most important things you can do, because otherwise you're just rudderless, and you're doing things to, trying to make money, but figure out your why. So I would ask myself what motivates me every morning to get up and do what I do. And the answer would be, because I love it. I love what I do, and I love selling, but also there's, I think people in their lives need to do different things. And this is just an extension of my sales career turning into a teaching form of it and a writing form of it. I can go out tomorrow and I'm still selling when I'm selling my obviously services,
Mhm.
but it's just different from the going on appointments. I used to meet people in their homes, so it was B2C, so a whole different level of selling. So, but find out what your why is, and don't be afraid to change or go after it. That's um, you can pivot, the COVID word pivot. You can pivot as many times as you want, because you will eventually. You just, if you're not happy, then what's the point, really?
Yeah, I totally concur with you on that. It is to find your why, it's to find your purpose, it's to find your passion, whether it is the industry that we're both in, or whether it's something else. Like you might be unsuccessful, but you might not feel it. And I think if you don't feel it, you shouldn't be doing it. Do
Hmm.
something that you can find your end vision, your end goal, your passion, your purpose, and do connect that with your dream. So, how can people find out more about you?
So it's pretty easy. You can go to my website, which is
On there.
allanger.com. There it is. And you spelled it correctly. Good job. It's
I just
Allanger.
copy and pasted it. That's all I did.
AllanLanger.com was not available. There's a rugby player in England who has the exact same name, and he took that from me. So it's
Ah,
AlLanger.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under Allan Langer, and Allan is Allan. And go to Amazon. Here's a copy of my book. And can I make an offer to your audience?
yeah, of course.
So what I'd like to do is, if people want to email me and mention your show, the first two people that email me and mention your show, I will send them a free copy of my book. autograph
So
copy
if
of my
I
book.
email you straight away after this, will I
You
get a
don't count.
copy?
You are not. You are not. I'll send you a book anyway. But yeah. So anyone emails me, and it's Allan, Allan, at allanger.com. Mention Jason's show, and I will send the first 2 emails I get a free copy of my book.
And remind me, I'll put that into the show notes as well. So
Okay.
thank you so much, Allan. You've been a phenomenal guest. I could probably talk to you for hours because it sounds like we got lots of synergies in there with stuff that we've learned along the way, and psychology and behavior and body language. I love all of that.
Yep.
Fascinated with that. And I'm only at the tip of the iceberg, probably like yourself. So
Yes.
always willing to learn a little bit more.
Great stuff.
So you listen to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. You've been listening to Allan Langer, not the rugby guy, but Allan Langer from the US, from Rhode Island. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
My pleasure, Jason. Thank you for having me on. I had a great time.